hosting this podcast on behalf of the AetherCon online convention. With us today, we have three luminaries of the RPG business. We have Kat and Josh Finney and Patrick McAvoy. So I thought first thing we'll do, guys, is one at a time, go to yourselves, a little bit of a brief chat about what you do, etc., experiences, and then we'll delve deep into your latest project. So who wants to go first? Okay.
Okay, ladies first.
Okay, ladies first. Kat? Hi, my name is Kat Rocha. I am the co-owner of 01 Publishing. I am also an editor, sometimes writer, and monkey wrangler, basically.
Monkey wrangler, thanks.
I keep all the creators in line.
Yeah.
We need it.
Yeah. And I'm Josh Finney. I'm primarily a writer, although occasionally I'm known to do art as well. I am best known for my books Titanium Rain and Utopiates, and I'm kind of the lead writer and creator of World War Kaiju.
And I'm Patrick McAvoy. I'm doing art on World War Kaiju, and people watching may know me from a lot of game art I've done, role-playing games, and collectible card games. I did massive amounts of cards for the Call of Cthulhu game from Fantasy Flight, and Game of Thrones from the same company, and oh gosh, Legend of the Five Rings, and then a lot of art for Dungeon Magazine and Dragon Magazine, things like that. And then I was on staff with Marvel for about a year and a half, doing art for their marketing division.
Oh.
Lots of things for the Marvel Style Guide that gets sent out to all the people who buy the Marvel characters to use for advertising, and then a lot of in-store ads and things like that. So I did a lot of fun stuff there, and I also do a lot of work on iOS games these days.
Okay.
And a little bit of comics, and there we go. That's
there
Patrick's.
Fantastic. Well, we're here today to have a chat about your new project, World War Kaiju, this graphic novel, which is currently, I believe, about halfway through on Kickstarter. Is that right?
60%.
Yes.
60%, not doing bad. I mean, I'm actually looking at it now on my screen, and yeah, you're well on the way by the looks of it, guys.
I'm desperately trying not to make too many DBZ references about how we've hit 9,000.
Well, let's. Who wants to go first? What we need to do now is always discuss the project. Let's stuff where it started, the love of the kaiju system. You know, all the Godzilla, routine. I'm sure that everyone knows about. People might not be familiar, for example, with the actual terminology of kaiju. So, who's going to go first? Tell us about where this started, whose brainchild it was, and how we got going.
I think Josh can really speak to that and introduce the neophytes to the concept of the kaiju, and then his whole philosophy around it in 63 seconds. Go.
In 63 seconds, and the answer is corn nuts. Okay. Okay. World War Kaiju. For people familiar with most of the work that I've done so far, my first book, Utopiates, was kind of a biotech noir, cyberpunk sort of setting, very gritty, very dark. That was followed up by Titanium Rain, which was military science fiction that tackled a lot of kind of heavy technology versus humanity, kind of the where we mesh, where we collide type issues. And after coming off the follow-up to Titanium Rain, which was Titanium Rain 2, I needed a break. I needed to get away from, the headspace that comes with telling a war story. And so I dove into a kind of a love from my childhood, which was the kaiju genre, the classic monster movies, specifically the golden age Japanese cinema. And that would be, Godzilla, Gamera, and all in between. And as I do with a lot of things, I started obsessing on it, started digging heavy into the backstory, and the whole culture of that cinema. And you know, a lot of people write those films off as just kind of campy fun, but there is a whole history behind where they came from, the mindset, the social conditions that influenced it. And for anyone who has not seen it, the original Godzilla is not a campy film. And the Japanese version, even more so, it is not a campy film. That is a dark, gut-wrenching piece of cinema, which it was not really the best choice to start with after coming off a war story. But then it started going towards the bizarre and campy very soon after. But as they started doing a lot of research into where these films came from, why they happened, what were the social influences, one theme that kept coming up over and over again was that the various monsters were always an embodiment or a symbol of something else. Godzilla started as the bomb, but then evolved into Japan's relationship to the United States, kind of a guardian of their nation they weren't exactly comfortable with, and one who often did more harm than good. Mothra was the symbol of Japan. Rodan was the symbol of Russia, and so on and so on. Now, there's a bit of controversy over how true that is. I mean, definitely some of it is, you know, outright stated, some of it's argued, but it pretty much got me thinking one evening, well, this was all a reaction to the Cold War, the post-war condition of the mid-20th century. And what if at the Trinity test site at Alamogordo, the detonation there didn't produce an atomic bomb? What if this world never had an atomic bomb? What if what rose out of the crater was an atomic monster? And that what ended World War II was an atomic monster attacking Tokyo on behalf, you know, sent by the U.S. rather than atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And what if after that the world spiraled into a Cold War centered around giant monsters instead of nukes? Okay. And the setting started just forming itself from there. It became very organic.
So we're definitely looking at an alternate history type setting here, aren't
Absolutely.
we? Yeah, so
Absolutely.
even though you took elements of the kaiju and the Godzilla movies, etc., it's been rewritten to sort of take into account actual events in our world, but where the monsters have took over instead of the nuclear weapons and the atomic arsenals that we see around us.
Monsters instead of missiles.
Okay, well, that sounds like a banner we should have up outside the White House. Monsters,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
we might long for the days of missiles if that happens.
Well, yeah. Okay, that's great, Josh. So you know, from your point of view, you're the lead writer on this. It's your brainchild. You know, it's your baby. So when did, say, for example, Kat and Patrick, when did you both get involved in this project?
Well, I think I'll answer quickly, and Kat can jump in, and then we'll just go from there. Kat, being my wife, kind of had to be there from square one. And,
she's had no choice, basically, has she?
Hear all the ideas being bounced off her.
You make it sound like it's a chore.
No, it wasn't a chore, but you were there through all of it.
Well, I'd like to say that I was Josh's first sounding block for bouncing ideas off of, and yeah, we started coming up with some ideas for the various kaiju together, and at that point, our friendship with Patrick was developing. We had met him through a mutual publisher, and well, Patrick's artwork was kick-ass, but honestly, we didn't think we could actually get him. Seriously, Patrick, we didn't.
He was always our first choice to illustrate this, but it was always one of those, you know, we'd always like to have Patrick, but, you know, he's in very high demand, like he's going to do it. You know, he's got so much on his plate.
Okay, so come on then, Patrick. What made you take on this project? Because obviously it's a bit different to what you normally do, isn't it?
Well, it's a little outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I'd done one graphic novel before, so you know, and a little smattering of comics works here and there. So I kind of knew the storytelling and that whole side of it. And you know, a lot of the work I've done with especially the Call of Cthulhu stuff. It involved some pretty creative creature design monsters,
Yeah.
so I knew I always liked that. And I have this thing under my skin, this pustule, this boil, if you will, waiting to pop of humor, which I never really have gotten a chance to do really overtly adult humor things. I've done over the years kids stuff, for literally first, second, third grade, little kids, and the humor in that vein, and I've done some very, very adult things with absolutely no humor, but I'd never really gotten to do a nice adult parody, dry humor piece like this, and so it really, really attracted me from that standpoint, plus the fact I got to do lots of giant monsters wreaking havoc. And then the third leg of that chair would be Kat and Josh and I all share a love for period pieces, for things actually in the mid-20th century that I got to do a lot of that with my Call of Cthulhu work again, and wherever possible I like to do things from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and then this is just smack dab in the middle of that, plus a big helping of 1960s super spy craziness. I get to do all of it.
Well, the best.
So there
the
was
best
nothing. So there was nothing about this that didn't appeal to me right from the beginning.
So why a graphic novel, guys? Why? Obviously, I presume that everyone's background is games. So why the decision to go to a graphic novel rather than, say, an RPG setting or a full RPG game based around it?
That's a good question. I think Josh's thrust has been graphic storytelling. So he's really that's his area of love and expertise, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah, I've done the odd game art here or there, but that was more just kind of to pay the bills. The primary, look, I am nowhere near the accomplished gaming artist Patrick is. The majority of the work I've done and what I'm primarily known for is my writing and some of my art as well, but mainly my writing in comics. As someone who does hard sci-fi, we've done a little. We did a Catwoman story for DC, but that really was kind of outside of our norm. I mean, primarily, it's always been science fiction comics and storytelling, and I do some prose along that lines too. So yeah, it was kind of a natural. And why graphic storytelling for something like this? While there has been some similar stuff done in prose, this is a larger-than-life visual, full-color extravaganza, Technicolor sort of thing that you'd expect. I mean, the book's even done in a widescreen format to get that cinema feel. Okay.
I mean, I'm a big comic fan myself, and I've done lots of art and sort of done my own comics, etc. And it's a masterpiece to be able to pull a graphic novel or a comic book off if you want, in my opinion. I think it's for a start, getting the writer's ideas on the page from the artist's point of view I always found to be very difficult. You've also got the unwritten rules about comic art, about the way the panels must move and the way you've got the speech bubbles. I mean, it's absolutely an enormous task, I think, from start to finish. So I mean, what can you tell us a little bit, everyone, about the process of the graphic novel? I mean, was it literally a case of, Patrick, you got given a full written script by Josh and Kat, or is it a little bit more different? Talk us through it, how you go about doing this.
Well, Josh does a sort of an odd kind of a script. He'll lay things out on a page as he sees it. So in our case, we decided pretty early on to do it in this widescreen format. Basically the comic turned sideways, and he sent me, instead of just a written script like I'm used to, sort of the words laid out on a page, and on a blank page, basically where he wanted them to be, and then he and Kat, I think, put together some really phenomenal reference material for page by page for things that I would need. And he said, here it is, go for it. And
change it as much as you want. That was said, though.
And he implied a lot, and he left a lot sort of just completely up to me, and I just started sketching my page layouts. It's interesting you'd mentioned balloon placement. I think that's really important. So what I do when I start a page is to first put all the balloons in place, kind of like Josh had already sent to me, except, since I have the pictures in my head, I start moving them around, and I make sure the flow of the page goes with all the word balloons and captions first, and then I do the pictures around that. And I think for me that really helps get the story going. And so from there, I'll just do the rough sketches around that and send it back to Josh and say, hey, look, I changed everything. What do you think?
Right.
Well, I can speak to that. Actually, one challenge for this project was everything leading up to this, I had always illustrated my own work. It was Kat and I that did our own stuff. And the way that I would script for myself is I'd write myself all the dialogue, all the narration, and just kind of rough blurbs of what I wanted the graphics. Next, I would put together the page, lay it out with a lot of photo and 3D reference, with very rough speech bubbles, so I knew how much room I had to work with. Then Kat and I got down to the business of rendering out the art for everything, and that is not a typical way that comics are done. And this being the very first project where I had actually written for someone else, I had no idea how that would pan out. I had no idea how I was not comfortable with the idea of full script, which is just you give someone a full descriptions of every panel. I actually think that's very restrictive for the artist, and in a lot of ways very counterintuitive. It produces a lot of comics that don't really flow visually very well. So ultimately, I just said, you know what, I'm going to give him what I usually work off of and tell him he has as much freedom to change everything as he wants. And it worked. I think the best sign of how well it worked is that, and one more thing is, by the way, most comics, the speech bubbles are the last consideration, which is kind of a frightening prospect. Kat and I did one script for somebody else, and that was, no, two scripts. One I won't mention, and the other was the one for DC when we did Catwoman. And in both cases, speech bubbles were the last consideration. And let me tell you, it is very nerve-wracking for them to cram words into art where it wasn't built around that.
Yeah.
It's very counterintuitive. So anyway, I gave this bizarre mashup of a script to Patrick, and I started getting panels back, and I got one in particular where he had actually switched where the characters were standing, and everything reads from left to right, and I'm like, oh man, how is this going to work now? The people are standing completely reverse. Completely reverse. It's going to have to change the order of the way they talk. Why did he do this? And I started putting it together. I'm like, no, it reads perfectly. In fact, it reads better. And that's when I knew, you know what, I can trust this guy with anything. He knows exactly what he's doing. And I've done lettering for other artists. I didn't do the art, I didn't do the writing, I just did the lettering.
Yeah.
And even some real good A-listers who I will not mention. I'd have to go back to the writer and say, okay, this is how much you're going to have to cut to make the speech bubbles fit. And that's a terrible thing to have to do.
Okay. I mean, I'm looking at some of the sample pages now on the actual Kickstarter page. When you scroll down towards the bottom, we've got some sample artworks that Patrick's put together. And one thing I've noticed from the style that you're using, Patrick, straight away is it's obviously a very traditional painterly style rather than a typical inked and outlined and sketched and then heavily inked sort of artwork. And also, looking at it myself, it looks like you've tend to gone for the way where a page might have a large dominant picture with the smaller panels, say, laid over the picture. Was that a conscious decision, or was that is that just the style that you like to work with?
It's not something that we have in every page. It's sort of dominating in those action pages because I like to think of it sort of as I don't know, when you're watching a movie, you get to a particular large set piece, and you have sort of action surrounding it, but then you have the part where the film's going to like linger, the camera's going to linger on something that's the main focus of the action. So I'm trying in my whatever way I'm doing to kind of get that sense of action where it's sort of bang, 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 then look, and then bang, 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 and look. And so it's like a breathing or a rhythm to it. It doesn't suit itself to every single page, but yeah, I've noticed when we get to the action, I mean, I'm tending to do more of that. The best place for people to look is probably if they go to worldwarkaiju.com,
okay.
Or you can too right now. We've got 17.
I will do that.
We've got 17 pages up, the first 17 pages, so you can see even more of the preview art there. And yeah, I'm just trying to meld my normal illustration style in with a comic book style, and hoping it's working.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when you look at different styles of artwork that you get inside a comic, and when we talked about this sort of widescreen mode that you're trying to go for, a lot of modern comics, especially those that have got a very cinematic or gritty feel, tend to go for those, rather than having, say, six or seven panels per page on top of each other, they go for almost like a letterbox look all the way down the page,
I'd like to speak to that, actually.
Okay.
You haven't seen my prior two books, I'm pretty certain, right?
That's right.
Okay. One thing is I often get a lot of comments on layout and panel shape and how the panels fall together.
Yeah.
And I believe that's an area that Patrick and I see eye to eye very closely on, is having what I call a dynamic layout. What you described, that letterbox, is the bane of modern comics. I believe that there has been this horrible mistake. It's been repeated over and over, and this is Hollywood's fault, and all the young aspiring comics people who think this will mean they become a director someday. Comics are not movies in paper form. They are a hybridization of moving images or suggested motion and text. It is a medium all its own. But that said, there are panels that will mimic the movement of a camera. And that letterbox you described, we're seeing that more and more, and that is an awful layout. That is actually the worst layout, and anytime I see that, it is painful, especially when you see it from a big publisher that should know better. But are you looking at the first few pages?
Yep.
Okay, if you look at page 1 with the B-29 flying in, and then you've got the map of Japan.
Okay, yeah.
You see how you've got that stretch panel of the B-29?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of tells your eye to pan across. That mimics, that in sense, is subconsciously, it's like having a camera pan. And then you see that box that's placed in over the map. That is like a zoom right there. Okay. Why is that box there? Other than, and that was put in after the fact, after that artwork was. Do you mind me saying I actually did the map, Patrick? Is that okay to say? But then the next page after that, we can see what Patrick did. You've got an establishing shot, and it's that wide screen of the plane, right? And then you've got two cuts. And instead of doing letterbox, you've got the side view, and that's, again, a two-shot of the pilot and the co-pilot. And then you see that tiny, tiny panel of just the pilot's face. That's a zoom. And again, these panels all suggest various camera movements in our mind because we've learned the visual language of film.
Yeah. And
so strictly limiting yourself to a bunch of letterboxes is just a movie storyboard. Now, that may look good to a producer, but in terms of storytelling, it's piss poor. You don't want to do that.
I should say that on my first full graphic novel I did, which was Starkweather Immortal from Archaea, I spent a lot of that. Probably it's about 140 pages, and I think I did about 100 of them just as it was mostly as an academic exercise, trying the letterbox format. So you'll see a lot of the letterbox format in there. I stuck with it when I could, just challenging myself, and I did get really sick of it and found all of the problems with it. And I started looking as I was doing that at people like for instance Brian Hitch, who sort of is the artist who came up with that, or at least codified it 10 or 12 years ago. And I started noticing as I went back that he was having all the same trouble I was having, is that the comic page just isn't made to do that. And because he's such a great artist, you don't really notice so much. But there's so many characters who are hunched over or getting their heads cut off, or you have to move the camera to the side when really for storytelling reasons you wouldn't want to do that, except you have to get all the action into the frame. And that there's so many inherent problems with the traditional letterbox format that just by taking our book and moving it on its side, we were able to solve so many of those problems. We can get widescreen, and we don't have to limit it into...
So didn't 300, wasn't that in like a letter? Yeah, I thought it was. Yeah, I remember that. 300 was in the book. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've noticed. Say again, sorry.
I was going to say, and I bet Frank Miller made that choice.
Oh yeah.
Strictly.
Absolutely.
No, I'm sure he made that choice not because he intended it to be a movie. I would be shocked if there was any other reason than he said, you know what, I have to show lots and lots of men standing in lines and in phalanxes. And how the hell am I going to do that in a tall format?
Yeah.
Wide format, it's very liberating. It is very, very liberating.
Yeah, it is.
So what, obviously we're looking at the artwork, but I mean, what we're looking at when we look at the text-wise, I mean, obviously you've got a large script, I presume, for the actual Kaiju graphic novel. Was there any kind of like decision process in regards to how much was going to be on each page? Because obviously, you look at, say, something like, say, The Watchmen, where it's very script-heavy, with lots of small panels with a lot of writing involved, rather than being, which I don't like, is this modern feel where it's all artwork over substance. I like to see a bit more script.
In the comics community, it's publicly everyone says Alan Moore's a genius, and that's because no one wants to upset him, and because, let's frankly, in his past, I'm not too thrilled with his modern stuff, but in the past his stuff was amazing. But you start getting people talking behind closed doors and in their own little circles at conventions, and apparently getting an Alan Moore script is a nightmare. It is a nightmare that you're going to turn to drinking by the time you're done with it. Apparently, Neil Gaiman's scripts are similar, and apparently he's even contracted. You're not allowed to change anything.
Oh, nice.
So, nice. Apparently, writing those kinds and for an artist, those are nightmares. The way that I worked, and this was one of the reasons I kind of insisted on giving Patrick my weird hybrid style, is there's a couple ways that I work with I did with my prior books that I illustrated with Cat, and so I had a lot more hands-on. And that was, I'd write the script, I'd have a basic feel. I've got after doing a few of these, you get an intuition for how much you can fit on a page, but then putting down the layout and the reference pictures and the ideas for Patrick, I can get a much better sense of how much I can really put on the page.
Yeah.
And that was the next determining factor, is I'd put the text in. Now I know for sure if it fits or not, if I need another page or two, which was vital. And I've got a rule that I do, and that is, I've done this with every project, and even more so with Patrick's, and the writing is not done until the art comes back. And because there's a rule for me, and that is, if the artwork achieves better than what the words do, if the artwork makes the words unnecessary, if your bit of narration is completely unnecessary because the artwork gets it there and explains it to the reader that much better, remove the text. Get it out of the way. It's not needed. This is visual storytelling.
Yeah. Okay, that's great, guys. Let's move on now quickly to the actual Kickstarter itself. I mean, that's we're here to promote the Kickstarter. I'm looking at the page now, and straight away, I mean, I've seen a lot of these Kickstarters, and the one thing that which dominates is that it's been put together very well. I mean, you know, I'm an arty person, so I'm always attracted to nice graphics and nice layouts, etc. You know, and you can see that the work's being done. You can see, you know, you've got examples of the actual graphic novel. You've got some interesting stretch goals. You've got some nice gimmicks there I can see. I mean, you know, can one of you talk us through this process and talk us through the actual Kickstarter?
Well, when Kat
Josh did that, yeah, I was gonna throw it to you guys.
Well, when Kat and I sat down to do this, Kat's kind of the business black belt of the equation here, and it was very important to me that this not just be another Kickstarter. One thing that had always been a real turnoff is that Kickstarters can very quickly become, I don't know, almost a flea market or a charity. And the stuff is either very nonsensical, like keychains and bracelets, or it can be stuff that's really come down to, well, I'll sing a song for you, or, you know, I'll call your house and I'll take you to dinner, and yeah, you know, I don't know that.
Or send me to Gen Con. That's the latest things you see everywhere, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's loads of that going on. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh,
That did seem like if we were going to ask people to get behind this project, one, yeah, it absolutely needed the best presentation possible, and let me tell you, a lot of sleep was lost over that. But second, I wanted it to be in such a way that the everything that was being given out, everything that was a pledge, the incentives were somehow related to World War Kaiju. That, you know, it wasn't just innocuous trinkets and items. And so that, for that reason, a great deal of the ones on there are interactive storytelling. They're artifacts from the world within World War Kaiju. There is, you know, postcard sets that have correspondence between the characters. All the posters are actual propaganda posters from the setting. You can get artifacts like Kai crystals that were used at the hatching at Trinity of the first Fat Man monster. Things like and you get documentation with history of why what this artifact was used for. Animation cells from a so-called cartoon that aired in the '60s to sell kids on the idea of giant monsters.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, these were all things that would enhance the story for you, but you wouldn't necessarily have to have them to enjoy it.
Okay, that's great. The postcard set looks nice. I must admit. I bet all the ones I'm looking at, I want those postcards. I think that, you know, they look really cool.
Cool.
I also like the, believe it or not, the thing on the page I like the most is a little black graphic of the Godzilla monster standing on the man.
I think Kat did that.
No, Josh did that.
Oh, Josh did.
All right.
I did most of the graphic design on the page, actually.
Actually, that little guy is taken off of the metal, you know, what to do in case a kaiju attack sign.
One of the incentives, and we're gonna post the graphic because I finally finished doing it. As far as a lot of the graphic design, I did that, and so.
Who needs Patrick? Go on.
Yeah, but it was just, I'm very obsessed with how the book is presented, how it looks, having kind of consistent feel to it.
Yeah.
Also, I believe it frees Patrick to actually focus more on the actual artwork rather than, you know, placing letters on a page or, you know, creating logos and such. But the sign that finally is complete, and I can't wait to show it to you, Patrick, is. One of the incentives is a civil defense sign, metal sign that was supposedly hung in workplaces, public places, and schools, instructing people what to do if a kaiju attacks. And it's all full of various icons and logos of, you know, monsters stomping on people and people getting eaten. And what you're thinking of one of the specific images, aren't you?
Actually, just thinking of the fact that. That image that we have of the kaiju stomping on the person, there's actually multiple little...
Oh, here's the crowd running away. Yeah.
I don't know if it was quite the same in England, but for for many, many years, like over 30 years here in the United States, there was the whole duck and cover thing that they would tell the kids in schools.
We didn't really get that here over here. I think over here it's a bit more a case of if it happens, it happens, you know.
Yeah. Here it was a national obsession, and they were drilling paranoia into the kids' heads, every day for having air raid drills. And so, Josh and Kat have put together a whole duck and cover in the kaiju world.
Yeah, Kat is drawing a mini comic that is based on an actual mini comic that was given to kids in the 50s and 60s of Bert the Turtle, and he's a turtle who knows to duck and cover when the bombs drop. So we've got a kaiju version of him called Little Boy, and he's telling kids about what to do when a kaiju attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Right, fantastic.
And Cat's drawing's sort of been great.
Okay, so looking at the Kickstarter, then you've got 42 days to go. You are more than halfway to your goal of $15,000. It seems.
Yes.
Looking down, I can see you've got lots of stretch goals. I mean, all the way up until God. I mean, over $80,000 by the looks of it. I mean, what do we think, guys? I mean, how do you think the Kickstarter's gone so far? Are you happy with it? Is there anything we could talk about there?
Oh, very happy with how it's going so far. And I have to say, these stretch goals are very important because as you go up in the stretch goals, the size of the book, and by size I mean the content, how many pages? Yeah, how many pages of actual story is going to increase, because this was always intended to be basically a 2-volume story, each volume with 3 parts. Currently, the $15,000 is to raise to finish the first part.
Yeah, 80 pages.
Yeah, and to get it printed. But if we meet the stretch goals, then we can do the second and the third part and have all of that together in the book the way it was intended at no extra cost.
Which is a total of 200 pages.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're hoping people are going to pitch in more money to get better incentives. They're going to tell all their friends and blog about us on Facebook, because once you start up, say you put in $25, you get the book with that $25, which is great. The book's going to be great, obviously, but it's great that you did that. But then, if we do meet our stretch goals of first $25,000 and then $35,000, those are the magical ones where you're going to get twice the story and a lot more supporting stuff for the exact same $25 you already put in. So if you can convince your friends to help us out and get to $35,000, you're going to get a 200-page book for just that initial $25. So we think it's a really great deal.
Okay, so the situation is, say you get to your $15,000 goal, and that enables you to produce this first volume, your first graphic novel. If you were not to get beyond that $15,000 goal, that's not going to stop you from continuing and producing the future novels, is it?
No. We'll continue marauding like a giant monster.
So is there any thought about maybe then doing, say, another Kickstarter on the back of this Kickstarter for the second volume?
Absolutely. That would be the plan. I mean, there's always the off possibility that the book does well enough that we won't need to.
Absolutely, yeah.
That would be the preference. But if not, I mean, the beauty of the Kickstarter is that it's allowed creators like ourselves who worked through publishers in the past to say, hey, I got this idea about a Cold War about monsters, which, by the way, is 2 years old now. We've been working on this for 2 years, and you say this to the publisher and they give you this look like, what the hell is wrong with you? Hell no, I'm not going to publish that. So the beauty is, with a Kickstarter, we go directly to the fans. We say, you want a quality book? If this is the kind of story you want, help us make it happen. We'll get you involved. You are, and you know what? And they actually get rewarded for it because they are opened up to things like, the incentives that expand the story that otherwise are impossible to get hold of. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Really like it. They can appear in the book.
Yeah, Kickstarter's a great way to just bypass traditional publishers, so we can have Kat and Josh here. They're publishing, and it's a great way to do basically pre-sales, and it's a wonderful way to. I'm sorry to say it to the brick and mortar people, but we're bypassing the whims and vagaries of the whole marketplace, because we go directly to our fans, and games are doing that now. More and more comics. I just worked on Numenera. It's a new game from Monty Cook. That's awesome. He raised $500,000.
It was unbelievable. I mean, you do see some ultra Kickstarters that go above and beyond. I mean, I know Fate Corp by Fred Hicks, for example. That was another one that absolutely went poof, just shook the world. And I think he's walked away about 12 times the amount that he thought he was originally going to, to raise.
Exactly.
So I mean, I was looking at Kickstarter, and I know a lot of people make mistakes, and a lot of people get problems for themselves. They don't look at the full, of everything before the Kickstarter goes. I mean, the one thing that tends to, I find, seems to nobble everybody is the overseas delivery costs. I mean, is that something which you guys know? Is that something that you guys have looked at in detail? Because a lot of Kickstarters have succeeded, but then no one's made the money because of the delivery.
No, you have no idea how much sleep I lost stressing over making
the numbers.
Sure, the numbers, and making sure that the delivery costs worked. Not only did I research other Kickstarters and how much they were charging for overseas delivery, because I wanted to make sure we didn't go overcharge people. Once we actually start figuring out, okay, what are our incentives? What is this? What is that? And I calculated weights and shipping, and
one thing just to say to anyone out there who's considering doing a Kickstarter, as an artist and as a writer and an artist myself, I know that when you get out there and you do your own project, it's a passion-driven thing. It's not really about the money. It's not about the idea that you're going to get rich. It's not some weird fantasy like that. When you're out there doing a Kickstarter, you're doing it because you love this and you want this out there. You want it to find its audience. And so often things like business classes and running the numbers and overseeing, overhead and all that gets missed. People often, even as simple as conventions, people don't consider overhead, and they keep asking, well, why do I lose money at conventions?
Yeah.
Do the math. Yeah. Get out there. Do not be afraid to do the math, or don't be afraid to marry someone who goes to business school and will do it for you, because it is vital.
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll make or break you.
Fantastic. Well, guys, I'm looking at the clock now. We're almost due to finish. So, really, any kind of last words or any promotion you want to do now? Now's your chance.
WorldWarKaiju.com.
You all heard it.
Yeah. Like he said.
Have you got a dedicated Facebook page for it at all? Have you got a Facebook page
Absolutely.
for the? Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's worth plugging that if we can.
I believe it's facebook.com/World War Kaiju.
And the important thing is watch the animated preview. If that doesn't sell you on it, I don't know what will. Seriously, but animated preview has everything.
And if you've got a blog, if you've got a Facebook page, whatever, and you like what we're doing, even if you can't give us much money, if you say, well, I'm going to pitch in $10 and get the digital version, which is great, I love that. Yes. I mean, you'd do us a world of good if you just go out and plug us a little bit on your blog.
Yeah.
Anybody who loves us is tripling their input if they just do that.
Okay, fantastic.
You can repost the movies. We've got ad banners free on the site.
Okay, that's great, guys. Well, okay, I think we'll call it a wrap. So I'd like to say goodbye to Kat, Josh, and Patrick. Thanks for having me, and thanks for talking about your project. Good luck with it, and come back and let us know how it goes on.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.